Hi, this is Dan Recchia with Alesis. Today we're here at Power Station Studios in Connecticut, and we're here with the flagship Strike Pro Kit. Now, like an acoustic kit, the Strike Pro Kit can be set up any number of ways to suit your playing style, and I want to cover a few tips and tricks to get you comfortable and creative at your kit. The Strike kits use a 4-post chrome rack, drum clamps, and cymbal boom arms that all drummers should be very familiar with. First, let's take a look at mounting toms on the rack. We provided oversized L-rods with your kit to allow you to mount the toms on the front or the back side of the rack. Make sure that the tom does not make contact with the clamp, the rack, or any other drums. This can cause the drums to trigger when you might not expect them to. Positioning the cymbals is rather straightforward. Personally, I like to set up my cymbals pretty low so I can easily play both the bow and edge zones or the bell zone on the ride. This brings up an important point about setting up all your cymbals. Make sure the Alesis logo is facing you when you're sitting at the drums, on the opposite side of the mount. While the bow zone goes all the way around the cymbals, the edge zone and also the choke sensor are on the opposite side from the Alesis logo. Finally, I know some drummers like to tighten their cymbal wing nuts with a lot of force, and this is because it can usually affect the sound of a real acoustic cymbal. However, for an electronic cymbal, this can actually cause vibrations to transmit to and from the rack, causing unexpected triggering. I'd recommend tightening the wing nuts just enough so they don't come loose when you're playing. This definitely helps cut vibration down. Now, let's move on to the kick drum. For me, having a big 14-inch kick drum was something that made such a huge difference for feeling comfortable and balanced when I sat down at the kit. Here's a quick and easy way to mount your kick pedal and make sure the drum is nice and stable. First, set up the kick drum itself without the pedal. Extend the spurs to their middle position, approximately 45 degrees, then extend the arms until the drum sits straight up vertically. Now, let's set the tension of the drum head. I think it's fair to say that the majority of drummers naturally rest or bury their beater into the head when they're playing. With that in mind, I'd recommend setting your mesh head rather loose to help prevent too much rebound, which can cause double triggering. Just don't set it so loose that the tension rods are rattling. Now we can add the kick pedal. Now there are a variety of mounting designs on kick pedals out there, and all of them can mount onto this drum. If you find that the clamp part of your kick pedal does not seem to line up correctly or cannot tighten far enough to hold down the kick drum, your Strike kit includes a rubber adhesive strip to give the pedal something to hold on to. Try with or without this to see what works best. Once you mount the pedal, try it out. If you find there is a little more movement in the kick drum than you like, now extend the spurs a little bit more. It's perfectly okay if the kick drum actually leans a little bit in either direction, towards you or away from you. What's important is that it's stable. Let's look at a couple of settings in the Strike module. On the module, let's press the Triggers button and select the kick drum trigger. Now, I had mentioned burying the beater and double triggering before. One important thing to note is this is a totally normal occurrence on an acoustic kit. The big difference with electronic kits is some of the sounds are already processed and loud to be more impactful, like on the rock kits. So different from an acoustic kit, it's actually easier to hear these subtle double hits. That all said, we can use this re-trigger setting to help alleviate this if you're comfortable with burying the beater. Raising the re-trigger prevents the fastest of hits from occurring. In the case of the kick drum, let's simply turn up the re-trigger setting until you notice the double triggers clear up. A good starting point here is about 30. Now, if you turn up the setting too high, you might begin to miss notes at faster playing. However, if you have a lot of fast double bass chops, you should still have no problem finding a happy medium. Like kick drum pedals, hi-hat pedals all share a similar basic design, and the Strike hi-hat system works with all of them. First, we add the hi-hat control module. Next, the hi-hat bottom plate. Now be sure to connect the 1/8-inch cable from this plate to the 1/8-inch input on the control module. Add the hi-hat spring. Be sure that the side with the black plastic surround is on the top side and that your spring is resting all the way down in the control module. Run your hi-hat control cable from the Strike module into the 1/4-inch input on the control module. And finally, run the purple hi-hat cable from your module up through the bottom cymbal and connect it to the top cymbal. Setting the height of the cymbal is a very personal preference on acoustic kits. Personally, I get the best performance out of Strike when I let the hi-hat rest on the spring freely, push down on the pedal just a tiny bit, then tighten the hi-hat clutch from there. This gives the perfect balance between comfort and translating the performance to your Strike module. Let's go back to the triggers menu, select any of the hi-hat triggers, and press F1 or F2 for pedal. Now, it isn't always necessary to adjust these settings, but they are here to accommodate your preferred height of the top cymbal and how gradually you want to hear the open and closed hi-hat sounds. First, I make sure that I'm getting a nice consistent chick sound. If you find that the chick is not occurring at all or rarely, adjust the close setting here while you're stomping. You might find that turning it up will bring in the chick sound more consistently. Once you get to this point, everything else should fall into place. The open-close transition should sound as expected. And that's it. Let's move on to some fine-tuning sensitivity settings on our drums. Let's go back to our triggers menu and select snare head. The same concept we talk about here can be applied to all other drums and cymbals. First, let's talk about what the sensitivity setting is for. The most important thing to remember is that these trigger settings are designed to make your triggers feel right with your module. They should only usually be adjusted once. If you later find that the volume on a particular kit or a drum is too loud or too soft, these are actually best adjusted with settings in the voice menu, not the trigger menu. This way you can save these changes for each kit individually. That all said, I like to adjust my sensitivity by hitting the drum as hard as I'll usually hit it. And while I'm doing this, I'll turn down the sensitivity until I feel the drum start to get softer. Once you find that number, add about 5 to that, and you should be in a pretty good spot. At this point, press the save button to save your settings. Now, if you want to make a volume adjustment later on, the best place to go is the Voice Velocity menu, and adjust the velocity to level setting. This will directly make the drum more or less dynamic. So if something doesn't feel strong or loud enough, try turning this down a bit, or vice versa. And now when you save this, you are saving it just on this kit instead of globally for all kits. Let's recap the important points to getting comfortable with your Strike kit. First, always look to make any adjustments to your physical drums, cymbals, or hardware before going to any settings. Secondly, make any adjustments to the trigger settings just once. Third, when making any further sensitivity adjustments, always try to address this with volume settings for each kit. Until next time, I'm Dan Recchia with Alesis. Thanks for watching.